I'm Elliot Chodoff, and welcome to Conflict Uncovered, your go-to podcast for in-depth analysis on the complex and dynamic conflicts shaping the Middle East, Israel, and the world. Join us as we delve into the latest developments, historical contexts, and the geopolitical forces at play. We bring you the insights you need to understand the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay engaged, and uncover the truths behind the headlines. Hi, and welcome. It's March 28th, afternoon, just before Shabbat here in Israel. And I want to try to break down what's going on in Gaza in terms of the demonstrations. Over the past week, we've seen reports of hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of Gazans protesting against Hamas and for peace, love, prosperity. Well, all right, not exactly. It's not clear what's going on. I mean, there are demonstrations and there are certainly numbers of people, I would estimate most likely somewhere in the thousands, out of a population of 1.5 million, so not exactly a significant number. But nonetheless, perhaps, maybe this is a turn, a breakthrough. It's a unique situation, and that large an outpouring, even as small as it is, against Hamas, if that's what it is. So let's look at the possibilities. And as I said, it's not clear, so I'm not going to come down hard on one as opposed to the other, but I want to at least see the weaknesses and the strengths of each of the possible positions. The most optimistic is that this is a spontaneous outbreak of opposition to Hamas. Finally, people have seen the light. And it could be. There are a few problems with that as a hypothesis. First, and I think the most important, is why is Hamas permitting it? Now, I've seen the arguments Hamas is weak. Hamas is weak vis-a-vis the IDF. It was weak vis-a-vis the IDF already on October 8th. It's weaker today, but it still purportedly is fielding a force of some 20 or so thousand terrorists. It doesn't take that many to pop up out of a tunnel, spray a crowd with AK-47s, and disappear back into the tunnel, and do that a few times. I've heard people say that, well, they're afraid that if they do that, they'll be targeted by the IDF. We're good, but we're not that good. They could pop up, open fire, and be gone long before the IDF gets a good zeroing range on them. I've heard that they're afraid to do it because they're afraid of the backlash. Well, if that's the case, this is revolutionary. Hamas has never worried about popular backlash as a result of their brutality against Gazans. And once again, we're not talking about huge numbers of Gazans. And again, even if we're talking about thousands, one clear way to see if they're serious or not would be for Hamas to open fire on them. It hasn't done that. And it has in the past. And it has shown its ability to brutalize people who oppose it in the past, making videos of the brutalization and making sure that people in Gaza know about it. So something's wrong with this. Even if the weakness argument is out there, I find it difficult to believe. On top of that, let's be clear that those who are demonstrating, and again, once again, assuming that it's a spontaneous, popular demonstration, are demonstrating more for the end of the fighting, and more importantly, in fear of an imminent Israeli major offensive in Gaza, more than they are against Hamas or anything resembling peace. Let's keep in mind that for all the so-called opposition to Hamas, No hostages have been turned over. Now, you could say maybe they don't know where any of them are. All of these thousands have no idea about anything. The population in Gaza is armed. The fact that a bunch of men and boys are marching in the streets with no weapons, well, IDF forces that went into Gaza in round one they were surprised by the number of weapons they found in private homes. Virtually every home had weapons, and by weapons I mean military style AK-47s, not home protection pistols. So if they're really turning against Hamas, and if there are really tens of thousands of them, where's the armed uprising? They're afraid of Hamas. Why aren't they going in with Israel against Hamas? Because here comes the next issue and problem. They may be against Hamas, but they're also even more so against Israel. Israel is the primary target of the demonstrations. And by the way, it's not a coincidence that placards and posters and banners are being written in English. I don't think it's because many of the leaders of Hamas are illiterate in Arabic. No, it's for world consumption, and world consumption means pressure on Israel consumption. We'll come back to what that means in a little bit. In the meantime, they are trying to prevent another Israeli attack. They're trying to get humanitarian aid reopened, although if you look at the videos of the protesters, you might be surprised by the utter lack of evidence of starvation among them. Some obesity, but no starvation. And this is in a population that we were told well over a year ago was in danger of imminent high death rates due to starvation because of Israel's policies vis-a-vis humanitarian aid. Okay, so that one didn't work so well. Another point to consider is that just because they happen to want an end to the war, by the way, a war that they were very happy with on October 7th as a population, we need to keep in mind that this is not necessarily repudiation of Hamas or its ideology. I'll give you an interesting analogy. Despite Hollywood's attempts to show the contrary, the plot to kill Hitler on July 20th, 1944, led by Tom Cruise, Colonel von Stauffenberg, the Tom Cruise character is made out to be a sudden realizer, having had an epiphany about Western liberal democracy. He's a good guy. In fact, the July 20th assassination attempt and coup against Hitler had nothing to do with repudiating Nazism. It had to do with the fact that these were a bunch of Nazis who were horrified that Hitler was leading them to defeat. They weren't about changing the regime in order to move it toward democracy. They were into changing the regime to allow the army to fight a better fight in the war that Hitler was losing for them. By analogy, these people don't like Hamas at the moment because Hamas has led to utter devastation of their homes and their towns and their infrastructure. But their problem with Hamas isn't its ideology. Their problem with Hamas is that it lost or that it's losing, and even more so, is likely to be going into another round that it thinks it can win, maybe. And Israel is threatening an even heavier assault than the October-November operation that began then into Gaza after October 7th. So this is what they're trying to prevent. This plays reasonably well in harmony with the hypothesis that the demonstrations are either organized by Hamas or at least being tolerated by them, because the effect of these demonstrations is most likely to have greater impact on world pressure on Israel than it's going to have on Hamas. Uh, please note, demonstrations in Gaza telling Hamas to get out. I don't see Muhammad Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar's brother, who's even more fanatic than he was, sitting in his tunnel with his other commanders and saying, "Oh, some of the people don't like us. Maybe we should pack up and go into exile." No, I don't see that scenario. What I do see is a scenario of a bunch of leaders, including Mohammed Sinwar, sitting there saying, "Hey, these demonstrations aren't great. We're not really happy with them. But they do serve a purpose, and there's absolutely no reason to stop them. If this can get the world and the UN has already jumped on board, to try to convince America, to convince Israel not to launch another attack, to delay it, give us a couple of years to get organized so that we can do it better the next time. Let's not oppose it. Let's go with it." So, in a nutshell, what we're seeing are people on the streets, people demonstrating for one thing or another, but primarily for Israel not to go back into Gaza. They may actually be unhappy with Hamas. They may be dupes and be pushed by Hamas. But whatever the case, we are not yet seeing a major shift in Gazan public opinion that leads us with anything to build on or to work with. Maybe it will be in a week, maybe it will be in 2 weeks, maybe it will be in 3 weeks. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. What I will say is that if it becomes a serious threat to Hamas, and if it turns into a gun battle level conflict between the population in Gaza and Hamas, one of Elliot's iron laws will kick into effect. And that is that an uprising or rebellion against a regime, totalitarian in particular, will succeed only if the rebels have more people willing to die than the regime is willing to kill. Now, given Hamas, their willingness to kill is at an extremely high level. Now the question is, will the opposition be willing to step up and suffer the casualties in a fight against Hamas if they really want to get them out? Time will tell. So with that, stay safe, stay engaged, be well. Thank you for listening to Conflict Uncovered. As always, it's been another rough day in the Middle East. We hope you found this episode insightful and engaging. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share and recommend with your friends, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. For more in-depth analysis and exclusive content, join our community and follow us on social media. Stay tuned for our next episode as we continue to explore the critical issues shaping the Middle East and the world. Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.